Have you ever had a game that you've heard a lot or seen images of it a lot, but you've never played it yourself? Well, for me, it's Klonoa, the Door of Phantomile. I was very curious on this game, and then holy sh! Yeah, but luckily the game was released on the PS3 store for $5. So for now, it's a bit easier to get. Anyway, so Klonoa is a platformer series made by Namco Studios that originated on the PS1. Since then, it spawned several sequels and spin-offs on different platforms. But for now, we're going to be doing Door to Phantomile, which is the first Klonoa game. So when you start the game, you'll find this very charming and cute little FMV. And I gotta say, for a 1997 FMV on the PS1, this looks pretty nice. It just makes you very happy. Anyway, so the game starts up and you hear this monologue about dreams, on how you remember dreams and where does dreams go. After the monologue, we meet Klonoa, who is wandering around the woods where he stumbles upon this mysterious ring. He decides to pull it out. Inside the ring, it spawns this ghost creature named Hupo, and thus this friendship is born. And so, this is Klonoa. When you boot up the gameplay, you first see is the art style. The game uses this aesthetic where the whole world is 3D, but the characters are in 2D. It kinda reminds me a lot of Paper Mario 64 or Kirby 64. Now for the gameplay, it's a simple 2D platformer, but when it was marketed on magazines and stuff, it was being promoted as like this weird hybrid of modern technology meets retro gaming. And yeah, I really love the art style of this game. It has this really warm and fuzzy aura around it. Now, what Klonoa can do is, he can grab onto enemies, puff them up like a balloon, and throw them at them. He can also use the enemies as some sort of double jump. In later levels, there'll be multiple enemies that you have to jump on them one by one, giving you this satisfying feeling that you're going high up into the platforms. They do a lot with the simple mechanics you have in Klonoa. The camera constantly moves different angles that gives this game a lot more depth. I also like it that the only time that characters are in 3D are the bosses. It makes them stick out well and feel more imposing. And for the music. Man, the music is really good. The emphasis on the flutes really gives this game a really dreamlike feel. Now, if I have only one gripe with this game, is that there's only 12 levels in this game. However, I do think they do a lot with the limited amount of levels they have. So, in a way, I guess you could say it is high quality over quantity. And at the end of every 2 levels, you fight a certain boss. And I gotta say, these are really enjoyable bosses. None of them are considered bad. And I gotta say, I really love how creative these levels are, like aesthetically and setting-wise. These are really creative worlds here. Like in one level, you're climbing up a giant-ass waterfall that's going backwards. Progression in this game is very smooth, and you will never get lost in this game. And what also makes you motivation to play through the game a bit more is that there are various cutscenes in this game as well. And also, it's fully voiced, albeit in a fictional language called Phantomile. I honestly like the idea of a fictional language, because this is clearly not Earth, so having a different kind of language kind of makes sense. Now, about that story. So in Klonoa, he lives in the world of the Phantomile. One day, however, this villain named Gaudius appears, and he's messing things up around the world. Gaudius has Liiiiiives captured, and he's trying to find the pendant that she has. However, she doesn't have it. One boss fight later, and it turns out that the pendant they were searching for was hidden inside the bell. Klonoa goes to his grandfather to ask for advice, and it's revealed that the pendant that they have has the power to summon the Moon Kingdom. He then tells Klonoa to warn Granny about the oncoming danger. On their way, they meet people that helps them on their way, they try to help people on their way, and face off various enemies on the way. This is where I should mention the secondary antagonist of the game, Joka. This guy here is trying to stop you from warning Granny, and he's also trying to find the pendant. Throughout the game, he's mostly seen as this comedic villain. The villain that's trying to be big and bad, but he just looks too goofy. He mostly just locks doors or summon enemies against you. He mostly just locks doors or just throw enemies at you. He's not really that scary or evil at all. Until Klonoa tells Granny about the moon pendant and explains to her where it is. But what they didn't know was that Joker was spying on them. And so, with the knowledge he has where the location is, he went rushing down to Klonoa's house. Klonoa then rushes to his house via a shortcut. And the levels where you're rushing to the house really does feel tense, like it's going fast as you rush through the waterfall. Klonoa makes it back to his house on time, but Joker's ships appear. He then fires a giant laser at the house, blowing the whole thing up, including his grandfather. He then steals the pendant out of the rubble, while leaving a sobbing Klonoa watching his grandfather pass away. This game surprisingly got really emotional halfway through. Like, after a few hours of playing this happy-go-lucky game with this cute little atmosphere, you never thought that something like this would happen. It's pretty damn sad, and there's nothing he can do right now, but the only thing he can do is to stop Gaudius from doing any more harm. Now, after climbing up this really tall temple, by finding these special keys, and then you are confronting Joker. And I've got to say, I really love the colors in this boss fight. It's really pretty looking in my opinion. Anyway, so you defeat Joker, but they are too late as they fired this machine that summons the Moon Kingdom. And this is the Moon Kingdom, and honestly, I think this may be my favorite part of the game. It's a pretty good level, but I love the aesthetic in this level. I love it when Klonoa walks outside, he leaves this star-like trail behind him. That is one thing I love about Klonoa, is the music is just amazing. And this world just nails the dreamlike wonder. And this whole level is pretty much like a bunch of mini levels to test out your thinking skills. This is also the place where the story gets a lot more interesting. And this is where we get the biggest twist in the game, where it's revealed that Klonoa's close friend Hupo is actually the prince of this kingdom. As he confesses what he really is, he shows off his true form. This whole time, his small ball-like form was just a disguise. He then asks Klonoa to help him a bit more, which he agrees to. What I really like about the Moon Kingdom is that it sets up the final battle really well. And now here we are, Gaudius, and they serve the best boss for last. And the atmosphere here is just amazing for a final battle. The way to attack him is a lot similar to the other bosses. Just wait until the enemy shows up, and then throw it at him. But wait, it's not over yet, as his plan has been completed. And his first order with the entity that's been born is to get rid of the strange dream. And before the final battle, Hugo explains that the strange dream that he was explaining was Klonoa himself. And here we are, the final battle. This boss fight is multiple phases, and the stage and area just looks amazing. Like, look at all the colors and stuff. This is a pretty good send-off of the main game, as you fire everything you've got, and then Klonoa fires the final blow. And now the world is safe. As Klonoa and Hupo return to their homeland, well, Klonoa's homeland, Hupo has another confession. And this is probably one of the most brutal confessions I've ever heard. So it turns out that Klonoa doesn't actually live in this world. He was summoned here by Hupo, so he can save their world. And to make sure that Klonoa can trust him, he implanted fake memories in his head, pretty much removing all of his original one. And just look how distraught he is. This must be a horrible thing to feel about, like, your entire life you believe that you live in your home when it turns out that you didn't. As the world is being restored, a portal opens up for Klonoa, trying to send him back to his original home. But Klonoa doesn't want to leave. Hupo tries to grab onto his ring to keep him there, but they both failed. Jesus Christ. When I first started playing this game, I thought it was going to be a really fun, yet simple 2D platformer. Basically a comfort platformer that it makes you feel warm and fuzzy to play. While I do think it is that, but I think it does a lot more. The gameplay is simple, but very fun to use, especially when you're trying to use the throwing mechanic as a puzzle thing. And the fact that you can throw things forward and backwards brings a new depth to this 2.5D game. The only other game I can think of that does something like this is Yoshi's Crafted World, but I think Klonoa does things a lot better than that game. The story in this game is surprisingly pretty deep and got me very surprised a lot of the time. It's a really charming and well-made platformer. I really recommend trying it out if you can. However though, it kind of breaks my heart on how inaccessible this game is these days. Like, I'm mostly playing this game on an emulator, because other than the PS3 store, there is no legitimate way to get a physical copy of this game. And the only time that Klonoa was officially released was on the PS3 store. And physical copies of the game is way too expensive. However, there is one more version of the game. So 10 years later, Klonoa got a remake on Nintendo Wii, and it is pretty good. Think of it as something like the Spyro remakes, where everything is the same, but the graphics have been improved significantly. The biggest change is that everyone is voiced in full English rather than a fictional language, which is pretty cool. But if there's a flaw, it's pretty obvious if you play the Wii version.
Come on, let's go, Klonoa. Right.
Yeah, for some reason, Klonoa went from sounding like a kid to sounding like a teenager. A few years later, a fan asked Eric Stitt, the voice actor for Klonoa, why does he sound like a teenager? And he responded by saying he based it on his design. So it's pretty much he didn't get enough references for Klonoa. Luckily, however, if you're really not a fan of Klonoa's new voice, there's an option to switch back to the original link. And for the stuff that's new content, that's not in the original game, there's costumes based on Klonoa's older designs. I always kind of liked his blue shirt design. You can rewatch all the cutscenes in the game, look at various character models. They also added a mirror mode, so if you're a fan of playing levels backwards, there you go. They also added a time trial mode for only bosses, which is kind of a shame because I would like to do time trials in these regular stages. And yeah, that's the new content in the remake. It's kind of bare bones, but hey, it's better than nothing. And I'll be honest, I think this might be my preferred way to play Klonoa. The developers of this game did a really good job on faithfully remaking the game. I did a little research on who made this game, and it turns out it was made by Payoff, which is a studio I'm pretty familiar with because I've played their Donkey Kong games. And that's Klonoa. It's kind of a shame that the series is on hiatus right now, because despite how good Klonoa was, the series was never financially well, which explains why most of the console games' prices are through the roofs, which makes it really hard to play it. It's best to just emulate the game, or you can get it on the PS3 store. I don't know, man, I just wish they would do something with it. Why not just remake the game? Again. And maybe add along Klonoa 2. Anyway, so that'll do for today, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!